Our future success is directly proportional to our ability to understand, adopt, and integrate new technology into our work. Good afternoon, one and all, and welcome to the third day of our webinar series, Geek Talkathon 1.1, conducted by Department of CS and IT of College of Engineering and Management Punapra, in association with CEMP alumni. It's a new day filled with new blessings and opportunities. Grasp them with both hands and don't let them slip away. Indulge in every second and live life to the fullest today. And let's invoke the blessing of God Almighty. I request everyone to be on a silent prayer. I'm much delighted to introduce our resource person, Mr. 𝑬𝒏𝒂𝒂𝒕𝒊𝒏𝒂. Mr. 𝑬𝒏𝒂𝒂𝒕𝒊𝒏𝒂 is an alumnus of College of Engineering and Management Punapra, currently working as a mainframe developer in Danske Bank with 6 years of experience in US and UK projects. He is also a co-founder of Capsky Technologies. He has also worked for manufacturing and logistics and health insurance with fortune companies like Anthem Insurance and Ford Motor Company. He has demonstrated the strong skills in both development and support projects during this tenure. We are much honored to have you, sir. Over to you.
Thank you so much for the nice introduction, and very good afternoon to all. And I'm very happy to engage with the youngsters. So today we are going to discuss about progressive web applications. That's one of the recent emerging technology that's happening on the web space. So let's talk about that, but I don't want to make it as a very boring lecture or a kind of a complete theoretical. Let's have some more engagement and fun throughout the session. And my intention here is for the deep learners who wants to know more about progressive web applications. Let's dig into some of that, and definitely let's look at some of the real life examples and how this progressive web applications are useful for the future. So this is my quick overview of the whole presentation. But as I mentioned, I don't want this to be a broadcasting session that I keeps on talking about something. So I really want all of you to go to the site slido.com. There you can enter this code 667 and 846. So you just whatever device you are accessing the session, just take your browser, open a new tab, and you can give this code and get ready. I'll throw out some challenges. Let me see how many of you are really smart enough to find the answers and help me to move forward by making it more engaging rather than just a theoretical session. So I'll give you some time, and you should be real quick. So let's continue with our agenda for the day. Definitely there will be an introduction. Then we will discuss about evolution of progressive web applications. Then let's try to compare the native applications and web applications. Then we will be having PWA pillars, then advantages and disadvantages of progressive web applications. And then we will discuss more about the core part, or I would say that's the backbone of every progressive web application, which is service workers and web manifest. Then we can go through the real life examples, then a couple of tools or resources about progressive web applications. So this is what my agenda is, and I'll try my level best to make it useful and not a boring session, like a complete theoretical things explained. So let's try our level best to make more engaging, but I need your support as well. So go to the site, slido.com, get ready with that, and I will throw out some challenges in between. So What do you mean by progressive web application? So progressive web application is nothing but, this is a classical definition of progressive web application I copied from Wikipedia, which says progressive web application is a type of application software delivered through the web using the technologies like HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And you already know these are all older technologies. So in progressive web application, the technology stack is not something really new, but it's a new way of developing applications. So I don't think the guy who created this Wikipedia definition is a very good progressive web application developer. But anyway, let's understand more about progressive web application throughout the session. But the major feature of all this progressive web application is basically it works on all devices. We have Android devices, we have iPhone devices, we have Windows devices, and we are all downloading applications from the respective Play Store, and we are installing them, we are updating them. So it's a mess when you change your phone or one application is not available on your Play Store. But progressive web application is mainly intended for using on any device, which is completely not depending on the platform which you are using. So let's dig into more of this some background of that and the features, advantages, everything. So before we start with the basics of progressive web application, you should definitely know how it evolved so far. So in 2007, Steve Jobs, during the great launch of iPhone, he introduced the concept of progressive web application. So at that point of time, it was not even termed as a progressive web application, but he just announced that all the applications for this iPhone devices, it will be a mix of basically HTML plus Ajax, and all their applications should go with that standard. But then what happened was, like, they were under the impression they don't need to come up with any special SDK for developing any iOS applications. But what happened was, by the end of 2007, the Apple developers, they were not really okay with that idea of having something in a common format on the web, because the jailbreakers can attack all those applications. So probably you would have heard of what is a jailbreaker. If you are not sure, definitely you would have heard of something like cracking a device or rooting a device, basically. So means every device which you are using will have a level of a layer of security on the top of your operating system. So if you hack that, or if you root your device, means your applications can directly access your operating system and make use of all the functionality. So that's a bit of a security breach, right? So Apple devices are famous for its level of security, and they don't want that kind of security breach happening on their device. So later that year, they decided we should not go with this approach. We should release our own SDK, and all the developers should publish all the applications on their own Play Store. Then they left the idea, but that idea was still present on the internet. And then what happened was, in 2010, the responsive web application started evolving on the internet. So that was the time Alex was in college, and I got an opportunity to read more about this responsive website and all. Nowadays, most of the website we are using on the internet, they are all responsive website. When you open a website on your desktop, you will see a different template, and when you open the exact same website on your mobile device, you will get another layout for your website. You would have seen a hamburger icon, which is 3 lines on the side as a menu. So all these options used to come because it behaves based on the screen size, architecture of the device, or probably the operating system of the device. So it's smart enough to show a website in a decent way. So that's how the dynamic web started evolving in the beginning of 2010. Then the 2015, the progressive web application started coming into picture. So it was Francis and Alex again, but not me. It's Alex Russell. He was a Google engineer at that time. And they coined the term progressive web applications. So they are very good applications with some certain features. So the applications that termed progressive web applications are the applications which are using service workers and web manifest. So I definitely know these are some new terminologies, but don't worry, we'll be discuss all about this service workers and web manifest later in the presentation. Then by 2019, almost all web applications, browsers started using this progressive web application. They started supporting progressive web applications. So almost all applications support progressive web applications except Firefox. So you can actually use this progressive web applications irrespective of your operating system, irrespective of your device. And the best part is you don't need to download or update anything from your Play Store. You are independent of Play Store. So that's the best part about progressive web applications. And what will happen in 2025? I have no idea, but I expect more emerging technologies gonna come for sure. And all those devices can definitely make use of progressive web applications. So right now the world is moving with the wearable technologies, probably the smartwatch, or maybe kind of Fitbit, sports gears, all these things you can actually wear on your body, and that can track a lot of things, right? So all those devices, probably it can come up with some progressive web applications. You don't need to really depend on any platform or operating system for using that. So now let's start more with the progressive web applications. But before that, I need your help. You can jump to your Slido quickly. Let me see how many of you are sleeping from the beginning itself. So you can go to Slido. You can enter this code 667846, and you can rate your experience with the web development. So this will really help me to understand to what level I can take the session. So 1 means the lowest rating, 4 means the highest rating, 5 means the highest rating. And if you are average, then you can definitely you can go with 3 or 2 or something. So I got only 4 response, and good that 4 people are very good with web application development. Yeah, I'll give you exactly 60 seconds. So quickly, let me see how many of you are fast enough to give me some good response. So I'll just pause 60 seconds for this activity, and let me see. I could see a lot of people are online, but hardly very few people are responding to my query. So let's see. Interesting. So means most of the people who are attending this, they are professionals, got some good knowledge on web development. That's nice. Yep. I'll give you 30 more seconds. I got only 27 responses so far. 28 responses, that's great, good, keep going. So let me see how many of you are fast enough, how many of you are not sleeping. 35, so means I'm talking with a group who are good at web development. That's really great. So let me see, the non-professional beginners are gonna beat the experts. Let me see that. 10 more seconds, we will wind up the rating. Oops, I can see the beginners are entering more. Cool. Thank you so much. So I can see the beginners are more compared to the experts in bulk if I compare all the results. So thank you. I'm stopping this activity for now. Let's move on to the next slide, which is server-side rendering. So when you ask me how the web is working, it's a very big solution actually. So we are not going into the depth of complete web designing, but probably some basics you should definitely know. So as part of that, I'm going to explain you 2 basic concepts of what is happening on the websites, which is basically the server-side rendering and the client-side rendering. So what do you mean by server-side rendering is, sometimes we, in short, we used to call them as SSR, which is server-side rendering. So server-side rendering means your web pages are, basically they are located on your server. And when your browser requests a new website or a new web page, basically your server is processing your web page, and that will give you some output. So your browser can only understand HTML format, or more technically, I would say document object model. We can call it as a DOM. So basically this DOM or this document object model is actually getting rendered on your browser. So the page is actually getting processed on your server. So you can see here on my presentation, you can see your browser can only understand HTML, and your server can deal with PHP, ASP, JSP, and you probably heard of something like a MySQL as database and a Node. So this ASP is active server pages, and the JSP is Java server pages. So they are all basically server pages. Means only your server can understand the language, and only your server can process that language. So basically, your pages are getting generated or rendered on the server, and you only get your HTML file. So that greater advantage of using this approach is basically your servers are capable machines. Means they can process the files in a faster way than your client machine is, or your browser is. So you can generate the files on the server and you get it rendered on your browser. But the disadvantage with this approach is, whenever you want to navigate to different pages or different content on the web, always your browser has to make a connection with your server, and your server has to process that request, and it should pass some pages in HTML format or something. It should pass it back to you, right? So that's when you compare this approach, that's the biggest disadvantage of using this server-side rendering. But definitely the processing will be much faster than your client machine. Now let's try to compare the client-side rendering here. Client-side rendering means basically your browser is taking care of all these responsibilities. So your page will get actually processed, rendered on your client, but still the huge data part, which will be definitely your data store, your database, all other stuff like which is heavy in size, they will be residing on your server, because you cannot have it on your client machine. And it's not a good idea to dump everything from your server to your client machine, right? So in client-side rendering means basically it allows a website to be updated in the browser almost instantly when navigating to different pages. But it requires more of an initial download. Means when you want to do something on a website and you want everything to happen in just fraction of seconds, just like this, you want everything ready on your browser, right? So you cannot depend on the server for each and every small interactions with that website. So that's how the client-side client-side scripting languages started evolving over the server-side scripting languages. So definitely, it was only JavaScript in the beginning, but then later, technologies like React, AngularJS, Vue.js, Ajax, jQuery all started evolving. But right now, I think Ajax and jQuery is not that famous, or people are not really using them. Instead, they are building applications with React, AngularJS, and Vue.js. And if you are a web developer, definitely you should learn at least one of this technology, one of the scripting language, and that will be really useful in the near future for sure. So this is how your client-side rendering and server-side rendering is happening. But the problem is we already saw some advantages and disadvantages on both the concepts. But how about something which is taking all the advantages from both the sides, like client-side rendering and server-side rendering? Let's take all the advantages and put it into a new concept. And that's what basically a progressive web application is. So now let's move on to this part, which is very interesting actually. Native applications versus web applications. We already know that we have a lot of native applications, and we love to use them over web applications. So let's try to see what all are the advantages of our native applications and their disadvantages. So native applications are basically installable. You can go to Play Store, your iOS store, your Windows store, whatever it is. You can go and install an application. You can download it to your phone. So that's a nice feature, right? We don't need to remember some link, or we don't need to find where exactly it is. If you install it on your phone or your iPad or wherever, it's easy for you to access it. Then it provides better file access. It provides better hardware access. You know, when you calling some person and keeping your phone next to your ear, then probably your phone will turn off your display, and when you're done with your call, it will again turn on your display. And when you rotate your phone, it's changing the orientation. And to use 𝑦𝒏𝒈𝒊𝒆𝒏𝒄𝒆 app, you need a Bluetooth connection, right? So your native application have a better hardware access. And it's very convenient to use. No need to emphasize on that. Definitely, it's more convenient to use than a website or a web page. And it's a faster loading, because you are almost installed an application with a 50 MB, 100 MB, 150 MB size, right? And if you are a game player, definitely you would have installed 600 MB, 1 GB games on your phone. So everything is on your phone. So you don't need to depend on a server to deal with the application almost every time, right? Then the notifications. Notifications are also very important feature of native applications, because that's actually increasing the sales to most of the companies, because they are reminding you to come back to that application if you are not in practice, or if you are not using that application for some time. But they do have some disadvantages, which are like it consumes basically a lot of storage on your device. If you are installing a game, you have to install close to a 1 GB file, APK file, or your iOS store, whatever it is. It consumes a lot of storage on your device. And the next one is update from store. We are all lazy people and don't want to go to update unless and until it is required. So we might be busy, and when we are opening an application, especially applications like WhatsApp, even if they ask for a backup, most of the people are used to skip it because they don't want the backup. They just want to message somebody. So that's how people are fast enough. Probably your generation is double faster than our generation, because we were happy with 3G, and you people are using 4G and 5G. So you are definitely faster than our generation. So we don't want to basically update an application. We're happy with what we have. And unless until it is required or some feature is really missing, we'll go to the Play Store and update our application. But it needs an update. Then the next part is device specific. Just imagine a company is launching a great product, but they make it available only on the iOS. So you are frustrated because you only have an Android phone. You're not getting that application. And the company cannot launch an Android application because they need to spend a lot of money. They need to find developers to build new applications, launch it in iOS Store, Apple Store, or your Google Play Store, or your Windows Store. It's a costly solution for them, right? But you are so irritated because you are not getting that in your Android, but all the iOS users are enjoying. That's because it's native application. It has to work on a platform. So you need a platform to work, right? So it's device specific. That's the biggest disadvantage of native applications. Now let's go back to the web applications. So the web applications, the best part is they are device independent. You can use any device, any phone, or whatever. It just need to support internet, and it should have a proper browser. So you can access that application from anywhere on the world, right? You don't need to be really depending on any particular device. And the next best part is less storage. Websites are just like you go to the URL and use it. You don't need to download the whole website or that big dump, the bulky size application kind of stuff to your browser, right? You just have to go to that URL and use it just like any other website. So the best part about web applications. And they're always latest. You don't need to go and update a website, because whenever you access a website, access a web application, you always get the latest version of that website. So you need to really worry about web applications in terms of updating the content or fresh content. But as I mentioned, they do have some drawbacks, which are like not installable. You need to every time remember or bookmark that link or save it somewhere to visit it for the next time, right? So that's the biggest drawback of this web pages or typical web applications. And slow loading, depending on your internet connectivity, depending on the kind of application, it needs to pull everything from your server. So the server fetching might take some time, and studies are showing typically like within first 3 seconds, if that web page is not getting loaded, close to 50 to 60% of the users, they will quit that website. They don't want to even see what is happening there. Probably you would have definitely experienced while using your Facebook. Probably you are scrolling the feeds and you saw an interesting link. You clicked on that. It's taking you to some website, but that website is not getting loaded in just like this. So you are frustrated and you decided, I don't want to see this. So you're closing that web page. So that's the biggest problem with typical web applications or web pages. The next part is limited hardware access. You cannot build an 𝑬𝒏𝒈𝒊𝒂𝒕𝒊𝒐𝒑 app as a website. Why? Because it cannot use access your Bluetooth, because that's more relying on your operating system. That's relying more on your hardware structure, right? So you can use microphones, probably your webcams. That's why I'm able to stream this, because I'm using browsers microphone. I'm using browsers engaging with my webcam. So that's why you are listening me now. So there are limited hardware access possible in web pages or web applications, but not complete hardware access is possible in the web applications. So we have discussed everything about native applications and web applications. So what I'm talking about is why can't we take all the positive part from the native applications and the web applications and put them together to make a new application which is powerful enough to address most of these challenges. So that's what we are discussing about progressive web applications. So in progressive web application, we basically have this three pillars, and you should remember all these three pillars throughout your journey. So just make a note of it if you don't have it. Capable, and they are reliable, and they are installable. And let's see what all these terminologies means basically. So right now in web applications, which or in terms of web technologies, we basically WebRTC, geolocations, push notifications are already there. So you would have seen this geolocation maps and all you can easily use in websites, and push notifications. Push notifications, like you already know when you use Facebook, when your friends are liking your post, you will get some some notifications used to come on the side, right? So that's basically the push notifications on your browser. I'm not talking about your application, I'm talking about your browser, when you visit Facebook on your browser. So these are all features already available on the web, but they do have some limitations, like system access, media controls, app badging. App badging means when you have some 10 notifications in your phone, next to your application icon, it shows 10 in red color circle. Means you have 10 notifications pending and you have not opened that application. So that's not that easy in it was not easy in web applications at one point, but now we are slowly evolving, and new modern web APIs are getting constructed for all these challenges. And now let's look at the reliable part of it. So what do you mean by reliable? Is by definition, it's it should support you even if there is no network, which means when you go to a website or some application, if there is no internet, you will get a dinosaur running here and there, right? You would have played that game. A dinosaur is running. There is no internet connectivity. Basically, reliability means we shouldn't show that to the user, because that's not a good experience, right? Even if you don't have internet, your application should work. So that is what we are all expecting. Even if I don't have an internet, I should be able to use most of the functionalities in that application. So your application should be reliable in terms of a progressive web application. So they give more importance to that part. So reliable means it's one of the core pillar of progressive web application. And let's talk more about your page load speed. As I mentioned, your pages or your application should load faster within fraction of seconds, and it should be able to remember your recent activities. Means what is the video you watched in YouTube last night? It should be able to tell you that. And what all activities you have done in the application, it should be able to tell you that. And offline support and user experience. User experience means when you click something, it should immediately show something. Rather than when you click, then it's showing loading, and it's going to the server, getting some content and showing. So it's a bit frustrating, and it's not a nice experience to the user. So user experience is very important in progressive web applications. And the next important part is installable. Just think about a website which you can install like an application, and you can use it like an application of app feel experience it can provide. So that's what we are planning through progressive web applications. So it can actually work like a standalone browser basically. So I will tell you one secret, but don't tell anybody that all the mobile applications which are using on your device is basically a browser on the backside. They are all browser engines. The only difference between your other applications and your Google Chrome on your phone is when you open Google Chrome will show you an address bar. But all other applications, they will not show you that address bar. That's the only difference between all other applications and your browser. Basically, on the back end, they are all browser engines taking care of or doing the same exact job. So when you deal with applications, always keep that point in mind. It's basically a browser which can act as a browser, serve as a browser, like your Google Chrome. So yeah, and the best part is it's optional to publish a progressive web application in your Play Store. Means if you want to publish it on your Play Store, you can publish it on your Play Store, but it's not mandatory. It's completely an optional part, and you can use a web application without using your Play Store. So personally, if you ask me, I hate that feature, publishing it on the Play Store, because I want to take the people out of Play Store. Because why we need to force the people to use some particular platform or device to access something on the web? they should be independent. They should be able to access it from anywhere using any device, right? So that's what the whole intention of a progressive web application. Interesting, looks decent because this is giving us a lot of flexibilities, freedom, and capabilities. It's reliable, it's installable, so much of advantages, right? But yeah, let's discuss more about this progressive web application and see whether they're really capable, really reliable, really installable to an extent. Now, let's try to understand the problems of this applications. So I've listed basically 3 challenges. There are a lot of challenges happening around us, but I just want to pinpoint basically the 3 major challenges which we are facing right now. Native application needs platform-specific code and support. So need to maintain separate code base for Android, iOS, Windows, web, or whatever future technologies you are inventing. All those platforms, you need to maintain separate code repository. Means when you write a program in C and it works only on your Windows, and just imagine you have to write a particular kind of a software which you have to. It is always depending on your operating system, right? So when you write something for Android, that can be used for your iOS. When you write something for your iOS, you cannot use that for your Windows. So typically a company wants to launch an application to the market. Just think it's possible for companies like Google, Twitter, or WhatsApp. It's easy for them because they have a huge employee base, and they can develop all these applications for separate platform. But when we consider a startup company, they might not be able to have so many people working for them because they will be a bootstrapping stage. They will be having less number of employees. So it's difficult for somebody to maintain separate code repositories for Android, iOS, Windows, or web. So instead of all this, basically progressive web application means one single code can act as application for your Windows, iOS, Android, web, everywhere. One code, one server, one deployment. So that's the problem we are trying to solve through progressive web applications. And the next part is native applications are basically good for hardware support. As I said, like your 𝑦𝒏𝒈𝒊𝒂𝒕𝒊𝒐𝒑 app should work with the Bluetooth, right? So you cannot do it in progressive web application. And device data access, and but the web apps are good for basically reach. Means anybody can access it from anywhere. You don't need to depending on a specific device or a platform. But what we are trying to get here is all the advantages. I need all the benefits. Let it be native application or web application, but I want everything good in all this side. So that's what the solution we are providing to progressive web application. But right now, it's not 100% mature, but I hope it will be at one point of time. And the third one, that's very important. The whole motto or the goal of having this progressive web application is basically it should be for anyone, anywhere, on any device. You shouldn't be relying on some platform. Some people get this application. Some people are not getting this application. Some of the people using older technologies are getting it. Some of the people using new technologies are getting it. So that's not what we want. Web is meant for everybody in the world. Everyone is equally have the right to use the web the way I use, the way you use, right? So anyone, anywhere, on any device is the biggest problem we are trying to solve through progressive web applications. So I'm just trying to give you a basic idea about this progressive web application. Basically, you can see on the screen like desktop, your tablet, your phone, your watch, your smartwatches, whatever it is, it should work like the same way. So you will get an app-like interface. You will get push notifications. It will update on its own. You don't need to go to a Play Store and update your application. So for lazy people, this is a nice feature. And safety is very important because progressive web applications need HTTPS connection always. So which means you cannot operate on HTTP. So safety is guaranteed in your progressive web applications, and higher engagement. That's a pretty important part. All the companies who migrated their web applications, mobile applications to the progressive web applications, they confirmed they are getting more customers visiting their applications, basically. You would have noticed Facebook has launched something called Facebook Lite, or LinkedIn has launched a LinkedIn Lite version, or Twitter, for that reason, launched their Lite version. So people are using the light version because you don't want to waste so much of storage on your device. And these light versions are more faster than the previous old bulky native applications. So most of the companies reported that sales has increased drastically because of using this lightweight applications, because more users are getting engaged there. Now, let's talk about some of the major features of this progressive web application. I know I was explaining everything in theory, so I thought include some slides which give you some basic idea about how this works. So the important feature of all progressive web application is A to H HS feature, which is add to home screen functionality. Which means you can see on the presentation, you can go to a URL, and in that URL as a website, it will tell you can install it, add it to home screen. So once you add it to home screen, basically you will get installed like application, and when you open it, you'll not recognize whether it is a browser or whether it is an application. You definitely feel it like an application. So it's a pretty important feature of every progressive web application. So you can install it just like another app on your phone, and you cannot recognize whether it is a progressive web application or a native web application, because the look and feel and the functionality, speed, almost everything, it will match with your normal application. And you don't need to even go to your Play Store to get it updated and all other things. So we'll be discussing about it soon. And the next one is push notifications. It was a big deal at one point of time, but for now, push notifications are not a big deal for your progressive web application. Just like your native application, it can trigger you some push notifications on your phone. So if you are not opening your Swiggy for 1 week, definitely Swiggy will can remind you that you ordered your last chicken biryani on this day. Do you want more chicken biryanis? Definitely it can remind you with push notifications. So push notifications are nothing but basically you want more user engagement. You want more people to revisit your business applications or websites, right? So push notifications are pretty important, and that was introduced on the web a couple of years ago. So that's an essential part of progressive web applications as well. Even if you closed the website, even if you are closed to the progressive web application, you will get the push notifications. That's the best feature about it. And this is the lazy part, the most hated feature of every native application, which is you need to go Play Store, download it, install it, and you need to update it every time when there is an update. And just think about some company who are not mature enough to launch their good application. Almost every day they used to publish the application, latest version of their application on the Play Store. So I'm not talking about companies like WhatsApp, Facebook, or Twitter. They probably in 6 months or yearly once, they will come with a major update. But if you look at some of the small applications, probably their developers are not talented enough to launch a major version of the application. So they will keep on publishing small, minor version updates, bug fixes, and all to the Play Store. So you have to forcefully go and download it. So that's not a great feature of native applications, but you don't need to do that in progressive web application. It's pretty easy. It will update automatically. You don't have to do anything on your own. When you open the application for the next time, you will always get the updated version of the application. So here are some of the quick advantages of a progressive web application. One is a development cost. Definitely you can save a development cost because you don't need an Android developer, iOS developer, Windows developer, Samsung developer. You don't need so many developers to maintain the code, right? You need only one developer, one endpoint, probably somewhere on the web you can host it. You need only one server to cater it. So in terms of a development cost, manpower cost, so much of saving when you are moving to progressive web applications. And the next part is user engagement. As I mentioned, if you're using lightweight applications, that's the best way. And we don't need to download a bulky applications. It's easy for users to engage with progressive web applications. Safety is a major concern, right? Nowadays, people are more concerned about HTTPS, the safe end-to-end encryption. That's why people jumped from WhatsApp to some other messaging platforms, and some of them came back to the WhatsApp again. So it's basically what is getting delivered on your HTTP and HTTPS. There's a big difference basically. I don't want to go into the technicals of a HTTP and HTTPS, but let me try to explain it in the way which you can imagine what is HTTP and HTTPS. Think of a big pipe, and you are entering from one side of the pipe, and you can actually walk inside the pipe, you can run inside the pipe, you can do whatever inside the pipe, and you are exiting from other side of the pipe. But the pipe is transparent. So the situation is, whoever watching at you can definitely see what you're doing inside the pipe, because you are entering, you're doing something inside the pipe, and you are exiting it. So that is basically HTTP connection is. HTTPS connection means that pipe is not transparent. So means I can only see when you are entering the pipe and when you are exiting the pipe. I don't see what you are doing inside the pipe. So that is basically the difference between HTTP and HTTPS. So applications like WhatsApp and all, they have to ensure this end-to-end encryption through our this HTTPS connection. So that's the basic difference. So all progressive web applications, they have to ensure this HTTPS connection. The next part is discoverability, which means these apps can be shared through URL instead of go to Play Store and install. You can share with anybody, just a URL, right? You can share it like another text message. So that's a better part about progressive web application. And we do have a lot of bit advanced features on progressive web application, like resource caching, predictive prefetching, and I don't want to really go into the depth of all these things, because on a surface level, I feel this is more than enough to make you inspired about progressive web applications. Now we are done with a lot of advantages on progressive web applications, right? We discussed its capability, reliability, installability, part of progressive web applications, and let's discuss some of the disadvantages. I wouldn't say it's a disadvantage, because there is no harm in converting your application into a progressive web application, but they do have limitations. So as a developer, we should be definitely knowing that this is having certain limitations, and my application shouldn't be a progressive web application, or my application must be a progressive web application. So for that, you should have a good idea on what all are the capabilities, what all are the limitations of progressive web applications, basically. So let's start with the crucial limitations of the progressive web application, which is the issue with the legacy devices. The progressive web application will support only on modern browsers. If you're coming with some 6-year, 7-year-old device, which is running with some old browsers, unfortunately, they won't be able to use progressive web application, because those browsers, anyway, no company or no corporate is supporting that application. So progressive web applications cannot support old devices with old browsers. So that's the biggest disadvantage. So you should have your customer persona before you go with this kind of application development. You should know what kind of devices your customers are basically using. Is it an iOS or is it an Android? Probably on an average, how many of them are using the modern browsers, modern devices? You should have done that analysis before you decide that you want to go with the progressive web applications. Another one is users of stores as their primary search. Means if I talk about some application to my father, what he will do is he will open his phone and go to the Play Store first, because that's the only place we know how to install an application. So it happens with most of the people who are using smartphones or whatever. Basically, they know only one source for all applications. They don't even go to Google and search applications. They directly go to their respective Play Store. They search for applications. So if your application is not published on Play Store, then you are going to miss a lot of users who have no idea what is the progressive web application itself. The next one is the hardware access, like a Bluetooth and NFC or whatever. We have a lot of sensors, proximity sensors, kind of a lot of hardware sensors on your phone, Bluetooth, the NFC, a lot of hardware specific devices, right? So we cannot use all those devices in progressive web applications at this point of time, but I am expecting we will be overcome most of those challenges at one point. But anyway, for now, this is not supported in progressive web applications. And the next one is port-to-port communication. That's pretty important in all our kind of applications like secure messaging or, for example, WhatsApp. You cannot write a progressive web application and make it communicate with your server just like a web request, HTTP request or HTTPS request. There have been a lot of protocols developed specifically for this kind of communication, port-to-port communication. You cannot see what is happening between them. It's end-to-end encrypted. So from your WhatsApp, you're sending a message to your friend. It's encrypted at the source. It will decrypt it only at the destination. So you cannot see what happened in between. So because it's port-to-port communication, that is not just like a normal HTTP or HTTPS request over the network. So that's a bit different. So that port-to-port communications are not basically supported on the progressive web applications. And the next one is simple. Progressive web applications can't do everything on the world. So you have a lot of limitations, but there are a lot of advantages also for progressive web applications. So you should be intelligent enough, wise enough to decide whether my application needs to be a progressive web application or it can be a more secure application which needs to use the hardware technologies. If somebody is coming and asking, can you create an 𝑦𝒏𝒈𝒊𝒏𝒄𝒆 app in PWA? Of course not, because we need the Bluetooth connectivity, right? So I cannot go with that. I cannot create a WhatsApp in PWA. So your site, your application is more like typical user interactions, shopping site, or kind of social media where you don't need a lot of hardware support. Definitely you can consider progressive web applications. I would say most of the big giants are also slowly converting their applications to progressive web applications because it doesn't need any hardware support for most of the cases. So now let's try to understand who is doing all these things. I said you can use it in Android, you can use it in iOS, Windows. So irrespective of your device, how this magic is happening, who is taking care of all these responsibilities. So that's what the service worker is. I would say service workers are the backbone of the progressive web applications. So you can see in this image how it works. So the application on the left side is interacting outside of that application is basically through a blue color service worker. So service worker is nothing but a JavaScript which keeps on running, just like ting, 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 ting. It keeps on running, executing every fraction of seconds, but it's not part of your application. Means your application is not tightly coupled with your service worker. So service worker is a separate script running somewhere else, and your application is something else, but your application, whatever it needs, it goes to your service worker. So the service worker will decide where should I get it, what should I do, all these requests. So it's service worker's responsibility to take some decisions and help the application to proceed further, basically. So let me try to give you with an example like this. Say you want to access a website on internet. So you are requesting that website. So your browser is requesting it from the server, and the server is delivering the content to your browser. So now your browser is able to render your website, and your browser will cache it. So the next time when you're visiting the same website, you don't need to request, or at least you don't need to get everything from your server. Basically, your assets like CSS, images, or the heavy video files, or whatever it is, the browser will cache them. And you only need the updated dynamic content from your server, right? So this is a great feature on web browsers, but it has one limitation. Means when your server changes the image, CSS styling, or at least the video files, probably your browser won't be knowing it, because browser is still thinking, I have something on my cache and I should use that cache and get only the dynamic content from the server. So those times we used to tell people, you can go to your settings and you can clear your cache. So your website will work as expected. But that's a big headache, right? We are not expecting all the users to be a technical user, go to the settings, clearing the cache and accessing the website again. So how the poor non-technical people are going to use this feature? So it's a big headache in normal applications, right? So it was a dream for the web developers for years and years to come up with something like service worker. So what service worker is doing, like in this image, you can see the application is requesting something from the internet. So the progressive web application is hitting the network, and it understands nothing changed on your server. So why do you need something from the server? So it always deliver something from your local storage. So that's what a database kind of thing which you're seeing at the bottom of that globe. So basically, if there is nothing changed on your server, you will get it everything from your local storage area or your cache. But if something changed on your server, still service worker will go to your server and see if something has changed. If something has changed, then service worker will immediately come to the application and say there is something is there changed on the server. You cannot access it from the local. You should go and put the you need to request new content from the server, which means you don't need to explicitly go and clear your cache, because service worker is taking care of all these functionalities. So this is one application or one task of service worker. It has so many other n number of responsibilities to make a progressive web application run smoother on this web. So a service worker is a separate thread and your web application is a separate thread, but they can talk each other. That's the biggest advantage of a service worker is. Don't worry, we will discuss about the service worker with some real life examples. So you can see what's basically a service worker and what all are the parts of a service worker kind of stuff. Now, let's try to understand web manifest. So all this progressive web application stuff is styling or the designing or behaving like or giving you an application feel is actually done by this web manifest file. Web manifest is nothing but just like a service worker, which is a JavaScript file. Your web manifest is a JSON file. And that's nothing but kind of configuration you are writing somewhere on your application. And when you open Android, when you open iOS, when you open your browser, basically it decides where should I get the data, what kind of icons I use, what kind of color I should use, what title I should use. So when you open an app, you would have seen something like there will be a theme color, there will be an icon, there will be a background color, there will be a name. Then a couple of splash screen, we used to swipe, and last will will give us some skip to use that application, right? So these are all actually defined on your web manifest file. So it's nothing but a JSON file, and this is the core of every progressive web application. So this guy decides how this application should present or display to the end users. Tired of so much of a theories, right? So you heard what is a progressive web application, all the advantages, disadvantages, limitations, theoretical part about the service workers. Then we have discussed so much about this web manifest file, how what is a web manifest file, and you're definitely curious to know how to create a progressive web application. So don't worry about it. Let's gonna discuss about this some real life example of a progressive web application, service workers, and manifest file, and I'll show you a high level idea about how you should start with your progressive web application. So just give me a second. I'll just go to my browser. Let's say there are a lot of progressive web application, but unfortunately, the most visited progressive web application happened to be a pornographic site. So let's not go there. And let's go to twitter.com. So Twitter is actually, if you ask me, this looks like our typical website, right? But actually, this is not a website. This is a progressive web application. And how you can easily recognize a progressive web application, just look at this corner on your address bar. Can you see an icon there? If I click on that icon, it is asking me, do you want to install this application? So I'm giving yes, please install it for me. So it installed an application and it opened it just like this. And if I can show my application deck, you can see it just installed like an application. So you can just install from your browser, and you can use it like any other application installed on your device. Let it be your desktop, let it be your phone, let it be your iPad, tablet, whatever device you're using. It will work like another application. And when you open it, you won't recognize whether it is a website shortcut. It's actually a website shortcut, but it's not a native application. But you will definitely get the feel of using an application. So if you does the same in your mobile device, definitely you can feel the difference and give it a try when you go to google.com and try installing this and experiment something with it. Now let's come back to the browser again. I'm taking you to the browser. Let's go to the twitter.com again. Now let me try to log in with my account. So this is how typical website look like, right? You have something, a side menu on the left, you have something here, you have a right kind of a menu on the right, or whatever we call a sidebar, or whatever it is. So this is how your typical website look like. But let me see how it look like on my mobile device. So you can go to inspect. Advanced people know that you can right click on your browser and go to inspect. You will get something like this. And I'm using Google Chrome browsers. Advanced users, they know how to do it. But just for the beginners, I'm telling you can right click, go to inspect, and you can see some button here. Probably when you do it, you will get something like this. But you click on this toggle device toolbar. So I'm clicking that. And you can see a big drop down here. You can see how your website look like in Moto G, Pixel, iPhone, iPad, Surface Duo, Galaxy 4, whatever device you want, you can change it. So this is how typically in Moto G4, my Twitter application will look like. Now let me try to change this to my iPhone 10, how it look like. This is how this website will look like on my iPhone 10. And let's try to look at how this is gonna come in my iPad Pro. Nice. It's more like a website, but let me see how it looked like in old iPad. Oh, the sidebar is not there, but I can use all these things. So basically, you can change your device and your website will automatically align the size according to your device. But this is not a great feature of progressive web application. This is responsive web designing. So this was already there right from 2010. But this is also available in your progressive web application, and you should focus about this. But we are not going to actually discuss about all these things. We are going to discuss about something really interesting apart from this. Let's go to, you can see a lot of tabs here: elements, console, sources, network, performance, memory, application. And I'm very much interested to see what is there in the application. So let's go to there. And you can see your storage here, your service workers, if there are any service workers, if there are any manifest, you can see all of them here. And it's on the back side of the application. So probably most of you would not have even noticed there is something called a service worker or a manifest. And probably if you visit a site which is not a progressive web application, you will not get this service workers installed with some script or something. So let's go to the service worker. So can you see your service workers are running? So right now it's token 1067 is active and running. Let's try to stop it. I stopped it, and let me see if my application is talking to the server again. No, I'm not doing any activity. So my application is actually not talking to the server again. So it's in stop state. So let me see. Yeah, I have done something. I have done something. So it started again running. Let me stop it again. So let me see. Yeah, it's again started running. So this is how your service worker running. Whatever you are engaging with your application, the service worker will take care of interacting with your server or your local storage, get the data or process whatever it is. And right now we are using 1067 version of it, but this is the source of your service worker. But when you open this link, probably you will not understand anything. Why? Because this is a build completed JavaScript, not the exact source code which we are expecting. So you cannot really read and understand what is a complete service workers JavaScript. But when you start learning more about a progressive web application, you will definitely get an idea about how a typical service worker will look like. But this is how it's doing. And let me try to go and come out of this. And let's see whether this number is changing or not, 1067. So I'm trying to log out from the application. And now completely logged out from the application. Oh, wow, yeah, this has changed. 1067 has changed to 1027. Means progressive web applications, when you get a service worker, and the service worker is a script with a very short span of life, which means when you do some activities, it automatically switches your kind of a service worker script, and you get a different token for that. So it depends on how efficiently you are building your service worker. You can also have a single service worker which does all the job for you, or you can even have multiple threads to run for different tasks which you're performing with your applications. So this is basically how a typical service worker will look like, and I will show you some more depth about a service worker when we discuss how to create a progressive web application part. This is your typical manifest JSON file, which is you would have definitely noticed a lot of icons. This is for Chrome. These are all your icons. And you would have noticed this icon on your menu. If you have not already noticed it, I can show you that also. In the application, when you look at the side menu or probably I will make it a little bigger. So can you see this icon on this side? Yeah. So this icon is what you're seeing here, and the search icon is what you're seeing here, and this bell icon, this message icon, all you can actually find as a bell icon here. And when you go to your home or your messages, you can see this plus icon here. So all your icons, all your splash screens, everything is actually predefined. And basically it depends on your device, you basically get all these icons rendered according to your use. So this is how typically it looks like. And now let's quickly go to a framework called Ionic framework. So you can use so many tools, so many development methodologies for creating progressive web application, but I would recommend something called Ionic framework, which is latest hybrid framework, which you can easily create web applications. You can go with all these components, and you can create a web application in real quick just with all these components. So I'll definitely share the link with all of you, so you can go to the site and develop. And we have all these front-end technologies here: React.js, AngularJS, JavaScript, and Vue.js. And there is a typical part which covers the progressive web application. You can navigate to the guide, and when you come down somewhere near this, say for example, if I am a React developer, I have to choose React here, and in React I have something called progressive web applications. So you can see some bit of code which does the progressive web application part. You can create, register your service worker, write your progressive web applications in real quick. So I'll definitely share these links with all of you, so you can go through these links and start learning how to create a service worker. So basically, if you ask me, in Ionic framework, they have almost done with the ready-made part of your service worker. You don't need to even write your own service worker. You can use this ready-made service worker for you. So you don't need to worry much about it, but you should have a service worker, and you should have a web manifest to have a complete progressive web application. Now you got some idea about where you should start with, how you should create your progressive web application, and this is a pretty decent documentation on how you should go with a progressive web application. And there is something on the developing. They have created some sample application on the side. You can start with developing something for your Android or iOS device in real quick, and you get all the components ready-made, and you can test it simply on this device. Like you can see how this toggle button looks like in your iOS device, and if you want to test it on your Android, you can change the experience. So now your button style, everything got changed according to your device. So this is a great repository which you can start with. So now I hope you got a clear idea about some of these things. And the next one is quality. You can't build some shit on internet and deliver to the people, right? You should create something really awesome, and you should have a tool to generate it. For that, you can use something called Lighthouse, which is a Google tool. You can go to inspect. This you can actually do for any website, and it's nothing to do with the progressive web application, but it's a great tool you can use. So when you go here, you can see Lighthouse. You go to the site and click generate. So this does all the magic for you to ensure the quality of your web applications. So you have a lot of parameters on a website or a web page or a progressive web application. So you have to run this audit report, and this Lighthouse tool will tell you what needs to be done with all the performance metrics or your, I would say, the search engine optimization kind of part. So I'll show you how the report look like typically. So I'm just performing a report on Twitter site, and let's see. So it's taking more time, it seems. So what basically this lighthouse will check? It checks the speed of your site. It's auditing the parameters which they are receiving from your site, and it is checking. Yeah, 61 is the score for your performance. Accessibility is 87 marks. Best practices 87 marks, and you have some improvements. SEO is really good. Search engine optimization is 91, and it is identified as a progressive web application. So when you scroll down, it tell you what you need to be done, and see here 4 seconds was consumed for a JavaScript which was not used by my request. Means probably this browser doesn't need this JavaScript. This was developed only for some Windows access. So I'm using a Mac, so probably I don't need this JavaScript. So that's why it took some time to get it from the server. But this delay is nothing to do with your device. Basically, Twitter failed to deliver within a fraction of seconds. Then it gives you some tips, what needs to be done, how to improve your application. And in the best practice, they will give you some tips like a display images with incorrect aspect ratio. These are some of the images that's not looking great, so you need to customize them. So it's pretty self-explanatory tips. So once you're done with your progressive application, come to this lighthouse and do a review on your application and improve your application to the best possible quality which you have. So let's go back to your presentation. And I just want to know how many of you were sleeping. So what you have to do is you can go to your Slido again, and definitely you will get some opportunity to go to Slido and enter your code and type some words which you learned today, something new. Probably you would have heard some 1 or 2 words new. So just jump to your Slido. You would have definitely something open. I don't want you to type the code on the Slido, the new words you learned from Slido. You can have multiple words also you can type. So let me see. I could see only one person is active and not sleeping, it seems. I'll just give you exactly 1 minute and let me see how many of you are smart here. How many of you could actually capture some of the new words from the presentation? Or how many of you have kept the presentation on the side and slept for the whole 1 hour? Okay, somebody is telling Ionic framework, web manifest, nice. Some of you are capturing some of the words. Cool, reliable, yes, that's a powerful part of a progressive web application. Excellent, excellent. Some of you are capturing the complete part about progressive web. Oh, most of you got the word Ionic framework striked. Nice, nice. Excellent. Web manifest, Ionic framework. Okay, Ionic framework is just a framework to start with a progressive web application. It's a wonderful tool you can start with. So if you're really interested to develop nice progressive web application, you can definitely consider using Ionic framework. SSR, CSR, yes, yes, good. 33, nice. Somebody is telling Lighthouse. Yes, Lighthouse is a quality control tool. So your website will get a best quality when you use a Lighthouse. Some of you are telling Ajax. Some of you are telling installable. Great presentation. Thank you. Pillars of progressive web application. jQuery manifest. It's actually JSON manifest. A2HS, yes, that's the biggest feature of a progressive web application. Nice, nice. So means I can see around 48, 50 people were not sleeping during my presentation. Thank you so much for your time. So I'm stopping it for now. Thanks for the great feedback. So these are some of the quick links. I know I expected most of you would have enjoyed your nice sleep, but looks like at least more than half of the participants were actually actively tuned to my session. Thank you so much for that. And here are some of the quick links. As I promised, I will definitely share this with all of you. I have quick notes with me. So the technical committee, can you share? I can probably paste this on the Google chat probably, but you people can share it with So whoever is really interested to learn something, you can copy these links and go to refer this site. I have included the basics and advanced reading links. So the technical committee, can you help me to cascade this to the YouTube viewers as well? So you can copy this and paste it on the YouTube. So they also will get the links, and probably somebody is watching this video at later point of time. They can also make use of these links and be an expert in progressive web application. So, yep. Yes, that's from my side. Thank you so much for tuned into the session. It was really nice, and I got a lot of users engaged with my session than I expected. I thought it will be a boring session, but some of you proved that it was a great, entertaining as well as engaging session. So feel free to have some questions. Let me try to answer the questions to the. Yeah, I can see a lot of comments coming in. Thank you so much. Yeah. I too enjoyed the session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
It was really an amazing and interesting session. Thank you. Now we are moving on to the Q&A session. So if you have any queries, you may please type them onto the chat box. So we have a question.
Yeah.
What are the possible uses of web apps in data science?
Okay, progressive web applications is actually not specific to any of the stream or any of the field of expertise, because it's just a way of developing applications, nothing to do with any particular field of study, like data science, artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics. So I would say progressive web applications with a current infrastructure, probably we can think about creating some shopping sites, or when you are planning to build some your project, your mini project or your main project, and how you can consider this for developing applications which doesn't need any hardware support, basically. So right now, the only limitation of this progressive web application is it cannot access our hardware. So I don't think I have any specific answer to that, but you can use it for anything, whichever you feel like, which is nothing to do with the hardware of your device, basically. Yeah, I hope I answered that question, but not the way probably the one who asked the question is expecting. But that's my feedback. There is nothing to do with your field of study with on progressive web applications.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
And next question is, are Telegram desktop, WhatsApp web, etc. exactly web apps via browser, not desktop client? So
Sorry?
Are Telegram desktop, WhatsApp web, etc. exactly web apps?
Okay, the question is whether they are pure progressive web applications. Exactly, they are not progressive web applications, because web applications typically they don't work with your hardware. That's what I mentioned. Like port-to-port communication is not right now as feasible in progressive web applications, or even in web applications to an extent, because the problem with this messaging applications, right? So they are not working as the way we are thinking. They are basically port-to-port communication. So they have some mechanisms to talk with the kind of port-to-port communication. So it's basically a protocol they are using. It's not a typical HTTPS request is sending to the server, or it's not a pure application programming interface like APIs we call. So they are not using basically the APIs to talk to each other. It's basically a separate, dedicated messaging protocols developed for Telegram, or whether it's WhatsApp. They're basically using those protocols to communicate. So progressive web applications is just like talking to the server in a typical way over a HTTPS connection, but to ensure the right level of encrypted security in an application, you need some level of hardware support, and that is not, as of now, is 100% possible in typical web application. So Probably I'm expecting all these applications can be created in progressive world, progressive web application world at one point of time, but at least for now, we have these many limitations, basically. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir. Before we move on to the next question, a gentle reminder, please do provide your feedback to us on the link in the chat room. We'll be happy to hear from you. So the next question, are progressive web application and a responsive web page same?
No, responsive web page is just a feature or the way of creating a web page. Means you can even create a web page without responsive or with responsive. So responsive page means it basically re-render or align your web page according to your device screen size, basically. Whether you access on a mobile or whether you access on your desktop, it basically align the layout of your website. But that nothing to do with a progressive web application. Progressive web application means if there is no internet, your application should work. But probably your responsive web page is not going to work if there is no internet. Or you cannot install your responsive website. It's just a website which need active connection with the server, right? So they are exactly not the same. And responsiveness is a feature of web application, but responsive websites are not web applications. Progressive web applications, basically.
Thank you, sir. So next question, any advantage of using PWA over any cross-platform tech stacks like Flutter?
Progressive web application is, again, as I mentioned, it's just a way of building your application. So if you use SDK like a Flutter or something for creating applications, that's more or less device as this Ionic framework also. It's kind of another Flutter, basically. So the Ionic framework, you can create an application in one code base, and you can actually, those are hybrid applications. You are not writing the code specific to that operating system like Android or for iOS. So just writing something for the web, and you are converting that hybrid application to your platform. So if you create an application in Ionic, finally you're done with your application, and it's your wish whether I want to convert this hybrid application into an Android application or iOS application. So you can actually get the SDK of your Android Studio, and you can take your hybrid web application there and get it compiled as an APK file and publish it on your Play Store. So then it will continue as a Android application. But if you are taking that completed web application which you created in your Flutter or in Ionic, then you can convert that as a PWA, and you need to host it in one place. So the advantage here is you don't need to separately maintain different code repository, because when you start developing it for a repository, for platforms, the problem is certain features will not work in certain platforms, certain features will work in certain platforms. So you need to have a maintain separate code repositories in your GitHub, GitLab, or whatever repository you are using for developing that application. You need to have separate code for each platforms. But whether you develop in Flutter or Ionic or whatever hybrid technology platforms, basically frameworks, you have the choice to either run it as a progressive web application, so one application that works for everything, or you can still convert them as a native application and publish it on your whatever app store you are using. So it's up to you whether you go with a PWA or you go with a native application. And Flutter, Ionic, or all similar tools are basically hybrid application development platforms where you can create everything as a web page and convert that web pages into an application, basically.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
So we have one more question.
Sure.
She's asking would it work with low speed of network too?
Yes, progressive web applications is basically its expectation is the initial hit will download something from the web. Then probably at later point, when you open the application for the second time or third time, most of those cases, it doesn't need something from the server. And probably if the developer is good enough to capture all the cases, all the functionalities, at least most of the functionalities, then they will be able to manage them, handle them in offline mode as well. But this is not something optimized in typical native applications. Means when you don't have an internet, your application won't work. But in a progressive web application, it should work. Means the developer has to do that. If you create a progressive web application which is only installable, you can show a placard to everyone, I created a progressive web application. But that doesn't mean that that is a nice web application. So that is what the actual problem with. Looks like I have some problem. Let me try to switch my cam. So is it okay now?
Yes, sir. It's
okay. Thank you. Any more questions?
Yes, sir. We have one more question. Full stack developer needs to know PWA.
Full stack developer means in a typical software industry, there will be a business analyst to capture the requirement. There will be a developer who is creating the code, developing the code. There will be a tester who is testing the code. There will be an implementation team to implement the code. But a full stack developer means simply you are the business analyst, you are the developer, you are the tester, you are the implementer. Means the whole stack you have to manage on your own. So that is nothing to do with the progressive web application, but it's worth knowing if you are a web developer. I won't say full stack developer because you can be a full stack developer on any technology. Mainframe or latest web technologies or artificial intelligence, whatever technologies you're working, you can be a full stack developer on that. So full stack developer means you own the complete stack. You will not get a developer, tester, implementer, business analyst for your work. So you have to do everything on your own. That means you are a complete, a person who knows everything inside out about that business and the application. So in web space, if you ask me, a full stack developer, it's worth knowing the progressive web application concepts because the world is rapidly moving to progressive web application world. But still, as I said, there are some non-limitations to progressive web applications. So definitely, it takes some time, maybe by 2025 or when you pass out and when you start with your career, by that time probably you will see a lot more progressive web applications because Twitter or Shopify, a lot of sites have reported their sales has increased, their user engagement has increased with the progressive web application. So definitely the big giants will at one time follow the progressive web applications. And why they're not doing is it's the cost. You have a lot of applications already on the Play Store, iOS Store, and some thousands of engineers are managing it. So it's not an easy deal for these companies to migrate it overnight to a progressive web application. But the time when you come to the market with a job after your training, your placement, probably by that time, you will see more progressive web applications. And I'm damn sure people will start consuming more progressive web applications in the future. So as a full stack developer, it's worth knowing progressive web applications concept. I hope I answered that question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So next question. If I say PWA is overrated, then will you accept it or not?
PWA is
overrated.
Will you accept it or not? What does that mean? I didn't get it. From what point they are, I don't know. The question is not clear to me because is it like I am promoting too much of a progressive web application or the progressive web application itself is getting too much popularity is what I'm not clear about. So if they who have asked the question can make it specific so that I can answer that. Or probably in a general way, I can say I'm not a big brand ambassador of progressive web application because it has some challenges. So it's just a choice depending on what application you're building. But if you ask me whether the progressive web application is getting overrated, yes, for sure, in the web world. Why? Because it has a lot of features which a native application cannot do, a web application cannot do. So a lot of developers are actually preferring to have the things on progressive web application. The startup world is actually looking positive about progressive web applications, because it's not possible for a startup to hire an Android developer, iOS developer, Windows developer for their applications, right? So they just need one developer who knows some coding, or a couple of developers to maintain one single code base for their applications. So that's what the web world is really looking forward to have, more web applications and more capabilities to be on the progressive web application world. So in both way, I would say the web developers are really looking forward on that, except on hardware limitations. Personally, I'm not a big ambassador of progressive web application. Why? Because it has some non-limitations as of now. But definitely, I've also created native applications. I also developed progressive web applications, and it's case to case. Whether you need some capabilities in your native apps, you have to use it. But if you want something really that works in a progressive web application world, you have to opt for that, for cost saving, easy maintenance, and lightweight. A lot of functionalities, right? So yeah, it's a case to case, I would say. And I hope I answered that question in either way.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that was the last question.
Okay, thanks. Thank you so much for having a wonderful session with me, and it's my privilege to have engaged with a couple of my old students, and it's really an interesting opportunity, and looking forward to connect with you for more engaging sessions. Stay safe, stay home, enjoy your day. We'll meet you soon. Talk to you later. Bye.
Yes, on behalf of the organizing committee and the institution, I sincerely thank our resource person, Mr. Alex Jacob, for finding out time of your heavy schedule and making these hours with your glorious presence. Thank you for taking your time to prepare for us such an enlightening and entertaining presentation. That was flawless.
Thank you.
And I would also like to take this time to thank our dear principal, Dr. 𝑬𝒏𝒈𝒊𝒏𝒄𝒆, for giving us this opportunity and your constant support. Now, a huge thanks to all who attended the session, and it was really amazing to have you guys on board. And thank you all for your patience and support. Hope to see you all in the next day, and wishing you a great evening. Thank you.